No maid ever lasted more than a week in that mansion. The millionaire's new wife? Cold. Demanding. Cruel. Until one black maid walked through the door, and did something no one else dared. She didn't just survive, she changed everything. The Lexington estate was beautiful on the outside, immaculate lawns, white marble pillars, and a fountain that never stopped flowing. But inside? It was a war zone. The staff whispered about the millionaire's new wife, Elise. Young, elegant, always in designer silk robes and heels that clicked like gunshots on the marble floors. But her beauty masked a venomous temper. She had fired 12 maids in just 3 months. One girl was dismissed for folding napkins wrong. Another for placing the perfume bottle an inch off. No one lasted longer than a week. "She doesn't want a maid," one former cook muttered. "She wants someone to punish." Charles Lexington, her husband, seemed too busy or too blind. He threw money at the problem. Hired more staff. But they all left. Then, on a cloudy Monday morning, Grace arrived. She was different. A black woman in her 40s. Modest uniform. No designer bag. Just a lunchbox, a rosary tucked into her pocket, and tired eyes that had seen more than she ever spoke of. The butler laughed as she entered. "Bet she won't last till Friday." Elise didn't even look up at first. "You'll clean the east wing. Do not touch my vanity. Do not speak unless spoken to." Grace nodded with a warm, calm smile. "Yes, ma'am." But what shocked everyone was what happened next. Nothing. She didn't cry when Elise tossed a tray of champagne flutes near her feet to test her reaction. She didn't flinch when the housekeeper warned her Elise eats maids alive. By dinner, the mansion was spotless. Grace even added fresh lavender to Elise's pillow. By day 3, she was still there. Still smiling. Still silent. And that had never happened before. Elise watched her. Studied her. Even tested her again, this time by smearing lipstick on the mirror and demanding it be cleaned without streaks. Grace handled it with such patience it was unsettling. And at night, in her tiny servant's room, Grace whispered to herself, "Lord, let me heal this house." The 4th day began with thunder. Rain hammered the windows as Grace polished the massive staircase banisters. The other maids whispered in corners, watching the clock. Most didn't bother to remember each other's names anymore. No one stayed long enough. But Grace had begun to change the air. She arrived before sunrise. Cleaned like a ghost. No footsteps. No complaints. No gossip. Elise noticed. She hated how calm Grace was. How her silence wasn't fear, but strength. One afternoon, Elise ordered her to scrub the marble floor in the entry hall, on her knees, with a toothbrush. Grace didn't blink. She nodded, kneeled, and began. Elise watched from the grand piano, sipping chilled rosé. "You don't talk much," Elise said suddenly. Grace glanced up, still scrubbing. "Only when someone wants to hear." Elise scoffed. "Do you think you're better than the others?" "No, ma'am," Grace said gently. "I just think maybe you're not as cruel as you pretend to be." The words hit like thunder. Elise stood up, wine glass trembling just slightly. No one had ever dared say anything like that to her. She turned sharply and stormed out. But something had cracked. That evening, the unimaginable happened. Elise twisted her ankle on the grand staircase. She let out a cry that echoed through the house. The other staff hesitated, frozen. Only Grace ran. She cradled Elise's foot gently, led her to the couch, and knelt beside her. Elise winced in pain as Grace wrapped it with a silk scarf. "You'll be fine, ma'am. You just need rest," she said softly. Elise was stunned. No pity. No mocking. Just care. Grace didn't ask questions. She didn't talk about it later. But her actions rang louder than gossip ever could. Elise stared at her that night from across the dinner table. No words. But her eyes were no longer made of glass. The rain didn't stop for days. The mansion, always cold, now felt hollow. The staff moved more quietly, as if waiting for something to break. Grace noticed Elise had stopped barking orders. She walked slower. Ate less. Smiled at no one. One night, around 11 p.m., Grace passed the closed door of the forbidden room, Elise's private studio. No one was allowed inside, not even Charles. But tonight, something was different. She heard a faint sound. Not music. Not footsteps. Crying. Grace hesitated. The hallway was dim. The rest of the house asleep. She placed her hand on the doorknob, whispered a prayer, and turned it. The door creaked open. Elise sat curled in an armchair, still in her silk robe, makeup smeared, mascara bleeding down her cheeks. In her lap, An old photograph. A baby wrapped in hospital blankets. The words hope scribbled on the back. She looked up, eyes red, but didn't scream. "I told the last maid I'd fire her for coming in here," Elise whispered. "I'm not here to work," Grace said softly. "I'm here because you're hurting." Elise stared, stunned by the words. She broke. Everything she had buried under elegance came pouring out. Her baby girl had died during childbirth 2 years before she married Charles. She had never told him. She buried it all behind perfection and rage. "I hated how they looked at me like I was broken," she said. "So I became the one doing the breaking." Grace sat beside her. No sermon. No judgment. Just presence. She took Elise's hand and held it like a mother would hold a child's. "Grief doesn't disappear when you hide it," Grace said gently. "It just grows into something darker." Elise wept. For the first time in that mansion, the silence was healing. That night, Elise didn't fire Grace. She didn't yell. She fell asleep in the chair beside her. When morning came, Grace placed the photo back in its silver frame and pulled a blanket over Elise's shoulders before slipping out the door. Something had shifted. Elise's war wasn't against the world. It was against herself. And Grace had just helped her surrender. The mansion was no longer silent with tension. Elise had changed, but not in ways loud enough for the world to hear. It was in the small things. She said please when asking for tea. Thank you when Grace handed her the newspaper. She stopped inspecting the sheets with a ruler. And for the first time, she joined the staff for lunch, just once, quietly, but everyone noticed. Charles did too. "You seem lighter," he told her one evening, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Elise gave a rare, soft smile. "It's Grace." One afternoon, Elise called Grace into the sunroom. Her voice, firm as ever, now held something else, respect. "I'm promoting you," she said. "House manager. Effective immediately." Grace blinked. "Me? You didn't just last longer than anyone," Elise said. "You healed something no one else could touch." Tears welled in Grace's eyes, but she held them back with her usual grace. "Thank you, ma'am." But Elise wasn't done. She handed Grace a white envelope. Grace opened it slowly. Inside was a full scholarship offer for her daughter, Maya, to attend a private university nearby. Tuition paid. Books covered. A letter from Elise herself sat behind it. "Thank you for seeing me when I couldn't see myself." Grace broke down for the first time. "I never asked for anything," she whispered. "You gave me everything," Elise replied. "This is the least I can do." Later that day, Maya visited the estate. Elise greeted her like family. And as the sun dipped behind the tall oaks surrounding the property, the mansion finally felt like a home. Grace had entered that house to clean. But she left behind something no one else could, peace. And in a world where everyone else had given up on Elise, one black maid did the impossible. She stayed. Not because she had to, but because she chose to.